Hi guys, and welcome to this video, which is part of Year 12 Business Management. We are doing our first video on Unit 4, Outcome 1, and this outcome is all about business change. This particular video is our first key knowledge point, and we're going to focus on what we mean by business change, and specifically the concept of it. So think of this as a bit of an introductory, hopefully shortish video that explains what is business change, what is change, and what that is going to mean for a business. So we're going to be thinking about where does change come from, which environment, what skills you need to effectively adapt to change, and that is hopefully what we'll achieve from this video. Now, in this video, I want you to be thinking about your knowledge of business, and in this outcome, I want you to be thinking about your knowledge of business. And I want you to pause and think, what are some businesses that you know of that have made a big change in the last 2 years? And if you're studying Year 12 Business Management this year, I encourage you to be watching the media, to be identifying the business stories where businesses are going through change, because you will be required to talk about them in some questions. Now, an example is Qantas. Now, this is an older example, but I want you to recognize that change is very important. Not only is change very important, change in business is constant. Effective businesses change and recognize when they need to change, and businesses that aren't good at that ultimately will not be good businesses and probably won't exist in the long term, because change is very important. And an example here is Qantas, and you might notice that this is profit. This was their yearly profit from 2000 to 2015. And you might have noticed that they were tracking along pretty well up until 2008, peaking at $969 million of profit in 2008. Qantas was a very successful business. And then you note that it all started to go down, and they made their first loss in a long time in 2012. And you would also notice that this was 244 million, but then in 2014, they had a $2.8 billion loss. Often this was some accounting things. They were writing off some assets that weren't that they needed to write off, but that is a massive loss. What do you notice? The $2.8 billion is not the most important bit. I want you to notice what happened the next year. They made a profit again. 2015, a $560 million profit. So we need to recognize that this business, Qantas, generally a pretty successful business, made a change. And if they didn't make a change, what might have happened? They might have continued to make these losses. They did a number of things that's not overly important. It's too old an example. But we want to recognize that successful businesses adapt and recognize when change is needed. So what do we mean by change, and what do we mean by business change? What are our definitions we need to know? When we are talking about change, not business change, we are referring to any alteration in the internal or external business environment. So any alteration or thing that has changed either internally or externally, which has created either a pressure or an opportunity for a business. So something has happened inside or outside of the business that has created either an opportunity or something that is putting some pressure on it. Now, if there is pressure or an opportunity, what would a successful business do? Recognize this and change. So business change, the one that we are more interested in, is recognizing this pressure or opportunity and then putting in place processes. So these are the set of processes implemented by a business to respond to the changes in the business environment. And this will either be in a controlled and systematic manner, shifting the business from its current to desired future state. So there's a lot in there and some bold parts which we want in our definition. So business change is going to recognize that there has been changes creating a pressure opportunity, and then the business will put in set a set of processes, so change, and implement a set of processes in response to these pressures or opportunities. These processes should be controlled and systematic, so there shouldn't be panic. And this is going to shift the business from its current to future state. Now, the aim of this is when you recognize pressure or opportunities, we are trying to do business change to minimize the threats and maximize the opportunities. Because if we do those two things, we will start to achieve our business objectives and expand its profitability. So what are some of the examples that we want to start to recognize and see? We could be talking about things like new management, so new CEOs, downsizing staff, so thinking back to our HR outcome in Unit 3, putting in a new product, deleting an old product, finding a new supplier, changing a supplier, bringing in new technology to improve operations, new training, new policies. There is an absolute massive amount of examples of this change. And that's because the sources of change are very large. You might remember this from Year 11 Business Management. We exist as a business in 3 environments. Our business, sitting here, has an internal environment. Our stakeholders, parts of our business that are internal that could result in change being required. These are the people, the employees, management, culture, policies, resources. As we start to go outside of the business, we start to see the operating environment. These are stakeholders that directly impact our business. Customers, competitors, suppliers, creditors, interests, lobby groups. These all directly impact our business and will in some ways drive change. For example, if a competitor creates a new product, the business will need to adapt to that. And then going even further, we have our macro environment, which are other factors, social, legal, economic, environmental, technological, and international factors, which don't impact the business directly, but these factors will result in change. For example, a legal factor might be a new law that will result in change being required. Now, anytime there is change, there is going to be an importance of management and the business managing that effectively. And to do that effectively, the people in charge are going to need to have high management skills. And you might remember communication, delegation, planning, leading, decision-making, and interpersonal skills are our 6 skills in VCE Business Management. So to successfully create a future state from a current state and implementing that change that is systematic and controlled, we're going to need the communication skills, because management must communicate the need for change, listen to ideas, and communicate this process. They're going to need to do delegation because change can involve lots of people. So management cannot oversee the whole process. They need to pass on authority for certain tasks or appoint change agents to make sure that it's managed effectively. This, of course, requires a significant amount of planning because all these changes, whether they're proactive or reactive, our next key knowledge point must be planned. It requires leadership and lots of decision making. Then management needs to select the best course of action. And throughout this is going to impact lots of stakeholders. It might even result in people being unhappy. We'll talk about this in driving and resisting forces to change. And this is going to involve a lot of empathy and interpersonal skills. Change can bring about a lot of stress and anxiety into staff. And even if you just think about your personal experiences, sometimes change can create a lot of stress. So that is our introductory video. I hope that has helped you understand what we're going to be talking about in this outcome. I hope that you understand what business change is, and we're going to delve into a lot more detail in future videos.